Would you take steroids for $1 million? But it's a big question. There's a big fight between the natty guys and the people that are like, doest thou wilt, and it's influencing culture. And right now the steroid games are on the horizon. The enhanced games are going to be coming out May 21st to 24th, 2026, about a year away at the Resorts World Las Vegas. It's coming, guys, and it's going to have a big cultural impact, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. This video is brought to you by Barbell Apparel, the best lifting clothing apparel there is, period, bar none. There's a reason so many talented athletes rep their gear. It's comfortable. It takes a very special type of apparel to square off my round head. And Base Strength. It's a book I wrote a couple years ago. People seem to like it. If you're interested in my books, go to BaseStrength.com. Now let's get to it. Now they just released this documentary on YouTube called 50 Meters to History that documents two gentlemen, James Magnuson, who's a 2-time Olympic medalist, and then Christian, I'm going to call him Christian G, because in my native tongue, those letters don't make that sound. And these guys were game. They jumped on and said, you know what? We're going to juice up, document our training. We're going to go for this 50-meter freestyle swim record that stood for over 15 years. And let's see what happens. So let's find out what happens when you take a couple of elite swimmers and then pump them full of androgens. Do they shatter records? Do they blow off tendons in the pool? Do they gain too much muscle and just sink to the bottom? Do their hearts explode? We're about to find out. But before we get into that, I want to attack the question of why there's a steroid games to begin with. I actually think it makes perfect sense. And if anybody's followed the Olympics, especially if you're an athlete, you know the stories. The Olympics are absolutely fucked. They come once every 4 years, and that makes them a really big event that gathers the attention of all the nations, and they put that kind of nationalism at the center of everything, my country versus your country. However, that leaves a big opening in the market because people want to train, compete, and follow these sporting cycles annually like every other sport, not once every 4 years. So you get a big drop in attention and participation between that time. And there's actually like a massive scam associated with it, and they put countries against each other to bid to host the Olympics, and the countries end up paying a ton of money. They have to meet these ridiculous lists of requirements that the IOC had to put out. And it's well documented now that these nations actually end up getting just exploited. I mean, you have more poor countries like Brazil that carve out spots in the Amazon to put these stadiums up. And once they leave, these stadiums just rot away. A whole bunch of money has to get dumped into it. It doesn't lead to any long-term economic growth. And the people that head the IOC just walk away with a shit ton of money and bounce from country to country. And now it's to the point where nobody's bidding, which is why it's stuck in LA. And the IOC is just known for being corrupt dickbags. One of the big things is about doping. They're staunchly anti-doping, and it's just resulted in a fucking mess. I mean, in the past, they've had such a strict list of substances that people were getting medals stripped because they had a cold and they took NyQuil. Caffeine was literally a banned substance until 2004. I know to a lot of you young guys, 2004 seems like forever ago, but your boy was moving weight in 2004. I was in college by then, deep in it. That is like yesterday. So we have a huge gap in the market. You already have that countless hundreds of thousands of people training and participating in these sports. There's just a 4-year gap that should be picked up with something else. And you could address the problem of inconsistent testing. That is the reason that the weight classes in Olympic lifting have been continuously rewritten and all the records have been scrapped. At the very least, this is fair. Everybody knows what's going on. And there's also an opportunity to address the cultural moment around gear, which, whether you agree with it or not, society is moving more in the direction of using things like pharmaceuticals to make their lives better, and the stigma around testosterone is slowly waning away. The fact is, there is a market here, and the market always wins. So you have Aaron D'Souza, who came up with this business model to undercut the Olympics at the knees, and honestly, I think it's genius. Again, morality, ethical questions aside, it's going to pay off for him. This article breaks down exactly what's going on. Again, Resorts World Las Vegas, about a year from now. They're going to allow athletes to take performance enhancers as long as they're legal, prescribed by a doctor, and taken at safe levels. So this already shows it's going to be a new paradigm because it's getting prescribed by doctors, not to actually solve a problem. It's not like, hey, you have muscle wasting disease. Here's some Anavar. It's, oh, you're an athlete. Okay, we're going to prescribe you this to help with recovery, and then we're going to monitor it. They're going to cover swimming, they're going to cover track, and they're going to cover weightlifting. And they're jumping ahead of the trans controversy, and they're just saying, hey, we group people based on biology, so whatever social construct you subscribe to doesn't make a difference here, which I think is smart. I think that's what sports should be doing. And for as much as a lot of the trans movement likes to kind of make that appeal to like genetic anomalies, that's not what transness is. Being trans isn't having Klinefelter syndrome. So let them deal with those exceptions as they pop up. But as far as identity goes, you can have your identity, but this is how you establish a fair playing field. And I think that's very smart. I think sports should adopt that. Now, this is where I think it's going to get huge. It's not just, hey, athletes that want to dope, here you go effing nuts. They're throwing money at it, because the Olympics, for as much as of an honor as it is, you get money through sponsorships. Olympic athletes typically don't make very much. And this is actually the big thing. It's that they're making it more commercial. They're not relying on governments to find athletes and send them over. They're saying, hey, we got the money. We're going to give you the money for breaking records, just like every other pro sports organization. And this is what's going to draw talent. This is what's going to drive competition. And this is what's going to bring eyeballs here. And I think this can make the Olympics obsolete. There's $500,000 in prize money for each event, $250,000 for the winner, a bonus of $1 million for anyone who breaks the 100-meter sprint or 50-meter freestyle world record. And this guy, D'Souza, who's running this thing, made the case, same case I made. He accused the IOC of mistreating athletes by not paying them fairly while raking in huge profits. And that's absolutely true. They exploit the hell out of not just athletes, but the host countries. And they make so much money, it's stupid. The IOC sincerely needs to go away. It is a blight on sports. Now, this is kind of the funny part, because these are businessmen. That doesn't mean that they are saints. They are monetizing this 18 ways from Sunday. But here they are announcing a direct-to-consumer business enhanced performance products, which will launch this summer and will give customers guaranteed access to performance enhancement science similar to the same protocols trusted by the world's fastest athletes like Christian G. Oh boy, what do we have here? Limited availability, guys. Secure your early access with a $99 deposit. Oh my God. Priority onboard. What is this training programs? I think not. I don't think this is a PDF template. Eligible customers will be able to access expert guided enhancements for performance and longevity via telehealth. So their business model is promoting the enhanced games and then allowing people to pay for a telehealth prescription and a regimen for enhancement. So this is basically an online TRT clinic. Again, it's brilliant marketing. As far as the ethical concerns, whether this gives your tummy the rumblies, I don't know. TRT clinics are huge. They have been for a while. Again, because there's a market for it. Guys aren't dropping dead taking 200 milligrams test a week. In fact, it solves a lot of problems with men. It helps with libido, energy, body composition, yes, performance, also mental health stuff that people run into when they get to middle age. So the stigma around cheating in sports, or did you actually earn that 500-pound deadlift? Who gives a fuck? When you get middle age and modern technology and medicine can make you feel better, you do that thing. So I have no charity for people that go after TRT like there's something that people should be like hesitating about when there's something that can actually have a lot more benefits than drawbacks. But as society's shifting forward, of course, more people are going to want to do that thing. It's not going to just match this strict definition of are you deficient or are you not? If you can establish a general benefit to more people, and again, if the drawbacks are low, you're going to have more people say, well, why can't I take it too? And then they end up doing that thing. So if that's the case, why wouldn't this bleed over into athletics where people are literally killing themselves, breaking their body down, suffering injury? If you've been an athlete and you've gotten an injury, you know what it's like to be out, to just wait for your body to put itself back together. You know that you're limited by recovery. You know the guys that have the durability to go twice a day, 7 days a week are going to beat out the guys that are prone to tendinitis or don't recover quite as fast. They get beat up faster. So I look at it like this. If they mastered prosthetics with robot technology, if people were walking around like an episode of Love, Death, and Robots with augmented arms, being able to do more things than the other could, we would be watching the cyborg games. All of the adaptive athletes now, they would be the heavy hitters because we want to see people breaking cars in half with their robotic arms. And I think there's always going to be a space for natties. You guys shouldn't worry, because while we have the cyborg enhanced games, you're going to need Greg, the 135-pound guy that lives in a hut and only lifts rocks and tree branches while wearing toe string sandals and a loincloth, because he does things the natty way. We're going to need him in the sidebar to show people what you can do with scurvy and osteoporosis like our ancestors.
The fastest swimmer in the world is the person that swims the 50 freestyle. 20.91 seconds. That's the world record.
So they're going after the 50-meter freestyle sprint, and This guy Caesar said it back in 2009. Now there's a bit of controversy because they allowed these polyurethane suits that changed the dynamics of swimming. And that year, apparently all these world records fell, and then they got rid of it in 2010. So they still recognize that record, it looks like, but then there's this controversy over how you're going to set it. Now, these MFers decided to go after both records. They wanted to break it in the suit, but also break it outside of the suit, what they call a jammer, which is just a suit that's from the waist down. So your torso is exposed. So there's going to be a bit more drag, a bit more resistance. It's a different dynamic.
I won my first world title at 20 years of age. Went to my first Olympic Games at 21. Had a 10-year-long career representing my country, and then was retired by the ripe old age of 27.
This is a pretty normal thing for a lot of Olympic athletes. They start out really young. I mean, really young. And some of them end up showing up at the Olympics before they're even legal adults. You have Olympic champions in weightlifting that were like 17, 19 years old. And a lot of them peak. And then once they start to get older, the ages where power output drops a little bit. People that are in sports where speed is a big component know this. Strength can last for a long time. Speed, you got a cap. And by the time you're around 30, it's usually a pretty steady decline.
The hardest thing I've found in retirement was I missed that drive that got me out of bed each morning to say, I want to be the best in the world.
Here's one for the enhanced games. I'm a couple of years out of retirement now. If they put up $1 million for the 50 freestyle world record, I'll come on board as their first athlete. I'll juice to the gills and I'll break it within 6 months.
I've been to 4 Olympics, many European championships, world championships. It didn't take me long to decide that after the Olympics, I want to be at the enhanced games.
This is another aspect of the demand. It's not just consumers wanting to see freaks. It's really also the athletes' demand. This is something a lot of people don't understand, especially recreational lifters. You're not professional athletes. The dynamic is different. The relationship with performance and your body is different. You view it as a sports car, and you want maintenance. You want work. You want the cutting edge shit keeping you in one piece and pushing you forward. And there's a lot of guys, especially given the number of people that are potentially enhanced in sports at any given time because they're cheating or they're lax on testing or whatever. There's a drive to say, what happens? What can I do if I'm on the other side of the fence here? So you're going to see some really heavy hitters hopping the fence.
Training once a day, 6 days a week. And by Thursday, Friday, I was tired, I was sore, I was struggling. Came over here, I started the enhanced protocol, and pretty much straight away, I started training 7 days a week, twice a day. So
this is one of the big things about gear that a lot of people also don't understand. Whether or not it makes a difference to how you feel about it. There's a sense that it does it for you. And it does a lot of things. People are always saying like, oh, it gained 7 pounds of muscle in that study from doing jack shit. That's glycogen retention. The methods they use for testing lean body mass can't detect water retention. Anybody who's they jumped on like 600 milligrams in that study. I'm always arguing with people about this. To go from never having taken drugs to taking 60 milligrams a test, that's a fuck ton. That's guaranteed in a week. You're going to get gyno and your cheeks are going to look like Kim Jong-un. Okay, you're going to get that North Korean leader, dictator moon face from all the blow. And that's easily 5 to 10 pounds if you're a normal sized man. I think anytime I go back on cycle, I gain about 8 pounds in a week. Test them 6 months later and see what happens. They don't just swell up from doing nothing continuously. It's you get the effects and then things level out. You either have to up the dose or you have to keep training. My tattoo artist actually was running testosterone because all his friends were, and he was a beanpole. He just did it because he liked the libido and the energy. So no, it does not just make you grow muscle on end, or else everybody would be looking like Ronnie Coleman. Now, yes, you will gain more mass over time than you otherwise would have, provided you're eating and training, but one of the big things that people really sleep on is that it allows you to train harder because your natural recovery limit is not holding you back.
I was training, went from 6 sessions a week to 14 sessions a week.
Super relaxed up front, pop, pop.
I trained twice a day, every day for 30 days straight, which basically got me from the couch to probably an intermediate international level swimmer within 1 month.
Thank you, Mark.
Let's look at that. Jesus Christ. Dorian, is that you? Oh my God, this does not look like the ideal swimmer build. Not that I am an expert on the sport, but there might be some problems here.
and he puts on muscle, he puts on strength. And so the enhancements have certainly helped him get stronger, helped him recover, but they've also had the negative effect of putting on muscle that we didn't necessarily want.
So that quickly created an athlete that we'd never seen before in swimming. A 252-pound swimmer hasn't existed before.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Yeah, yes, it does help you gain muscle. My claim was never that it doesn't, just not the way people think. This guy is training resistance training, even swimming. It's not optimal hypertrophy training, but that is conducive to hypertrophy, especially the volume. And that with the strength training and the diet, he's probably eating his ass off, like 250 pounds. I don't know. What's the average swimmer weigh? So apparently the best swimmers have been under 200 pounds, 190, 195. With more muscle, you're talking about less buoyancy because muscle is very dense. You're talking about restriction. That's probably one of the biggest things here, rather than just having an engine that slows you down. I mean, the fastest men alive aren't going to be the Ethiopian runners who are super light. You need enough mass to create the power, but there's an intersection of when the extra body weight actually works against you. I don't know if that's where this guy is. I would think the tight lats are probably the biggest concern. It changes your mechanics. But this is patient zero for figuring out what happens when swimmers can go nuts. I think this is hilarious. This should be on every billboard in Vegas. So they have the big dramatic finish. They show these guys prep. They interview them, chart their health, interview their families. What are you thinking? And then they have the big day. It's time to go in, put the pedal to the metal and see what they actually ended up with. And James ended up falling short. His best time was a bit over 22 seconds, which was outside of the top 8 at the last Olympics. And they were a bit confused. He thought that he was going to put up a better time, that he was going to be faster. And there's a lot of things to tweak. Is he really too old? The fact that he's bigger is probably one of the biggest reasons. 250 pounds, you're 50, 55 pounds over the best swimmers in the world. That's not nothing. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, if you're a 280 pound athlete, what's it like to run an 11-second 100-meter dash? Is that competitive? No. Is that fast as shit for how big you are? Absolutely. So then they go to Christian. Not only does Christian take it down, he beats the supersuit record by 0.02 seconds. Cue the Vin Diesel, doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. But then he goes on to take down the record in the jammer. Now, of course, these are exhibitions. These weren't done in full competitions, but also these are two individuals. You plucked two guys, had them go through this regimen, and had them walk away with these times that were specifically under these world record performances. I think this bodes very well for what the sport is going to do. You get more people, more talent, you tweak the methodologies better, and especially as it becomes less stigmatized, I think you're going to find a lot of these numbers fall away. I think what you're going to see is people get tired of the Olympics because there's no certainty in what the people are or aren't doing. That's always going to be a controversy. If the performances are specifically lower, and if you have 4 years in between, well, if you're on 4, 6, 8 years of the enhanced games becoming the kind of staple track and field and swimming and lifting events, it's probably going to pull attention away from the Olympics, especially if better athletes are opting to go for the $1 million cash prize here, which I got to believe a few of them will. This reminds me a lot of the early UFC days. Everybody's clutching their pearls, talking about how barbaric it was, and now it's seen as like a good Saturday night family viewing event. Society adapts. People always want to see what happens when we push the envelope, and oftentimes it's just getting comfortable with something we weren't used to, and everybody's expectations shift. I'm actually going to make a bold prediction around this. If they actually observe health markers accurately for the athletes, I mean, like really, if they DQ athletes for getting into like some type of red zone, for having dangerous numbers, I bet that you will find the health effects short and long term for these athletes minimal. 100%. Right now, the sense of danger we have from steroids is from the most extreme users that run the absolute highest doses, 50 times, dirty compounds, things that raise blood pressure, that damage your heart, that cause neurological damage at high doses for decades on end. Bodybuilders mainly, while also abusing diuretics. If you can accurately cap it, which it seems like a sport that acknowledges the use and works around that is going to be able to do better than one where it's all in the shadows, you're going to eliminate the guys that are like trying to blast themselves to the next level. That's a big thing with guys that are pretty good. They're right there and they think they can just ramp themselves up by upping the dose. You're going to select for the guys that are talented, that know how to train, that know their bodies, that have the longevity and the systems behind them, that are also genetically predisposed to responding to the appropriate doses that aren't going to kill them to set those numbers. And I actually think there's a potentially good thing here, which is to tell people that, hey, you can use this as a tool, get what you want out of it, and not kill yourself. Now, that's going to lead to an interesting philosophical debate in the natty community, because my prediction is also that natties are going to push back regardless, proving what I've said for a long time, that it's not about health whatsoever. It's about ego. It's about other people getting attention that you feel like you deserve. It's people saying, well, you didn't earn that, so it doesn't count. As if everything we do in society has to be done the hardest way possible so we feel good. There's people that can build their own houses, and I'm sure it's more satisfying when you do that. I don't give a shit. I need a house. I'm going to do it the easy way. There's also a case to be made for my performance, for the fact of having more energy, having more muscle, being able to take the work that I do in the gym and take it farther. There's a utilitarian case that doesn't have fuck all to do with whether or not I'm training like an Amish. Now, that's me. That's my subjective value system on it, and to each their own. But I would say that if you are staunchly against this, I'm going to predict this is going to take off, and you guys better get your talking points down now for why athletes who break themselves for decades on end to be the best at what they do should not use modern technology in order to get more out of their bodies. If they're not going against natty lifters, if they're open and honest about what they're doing, they're only competing against each other, and they're doing health checks to make sure they're about as healthy as any other athlete. You have to get honest with what your argument is. I mean, if you use a bicycle in a foot race, or if you use a Formula One car in a bicycle race, that's cheating. But if everybody is using the exact same thing, then that's just the competition. Like, that's how I think about it. A guy on the Tour de France, a Frenchman, screaming at some kid on a BMX bike, like, the engine does it all for you. That's not real. You're cheating. That's my French accent, by the way. I look at this the same way. It's noise. How you compete is up to you, and it's arbitrary. As long as you're on an even playing field, apples are being compared to apples, we're made in the shade. That's what it is. It's just a matter of how much risk you want. So whether or not you want to risk the concussions, the CTE that comes from BMX riding, or that comes from playing rugby or football, whether you want to risk the death that comes from slipping off a rock while you're free soloing El Capitan, it's to the individual, and this type of athletics is no different. So I look forward to all the angry comments. I'm sure many of you are going to be furious. So leave your hate below. Thanks for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.